Hi lovelies, I'm your host Thea. Join me each week as we discuss all things AAA, indie, game development, art and more here at Girls in Gaming. GG everybody.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Girls in Gaming. I'm your host Thea, and today joining me is my lovely co-host and brother Kaine. Say hi,
Hello.
Kaine.
Hello.
Now, I don't think I trust anyone as much as I trust you when it comes to talking about things like psychological impacts in gaming around LGBTQI plus and diverse representation of gender and sexuality. So that's what we're talking about today. I had to stop Kaine a little bit earlier because I was bringing up some of the talking topics that I wanted to discuss for this podcast, and immediately, obviously, started hitting off some really good content there. So I had to stop you because I wanted genuine and first-hand accounts. So that being said, I think I asked you evolution of LGBTQI plus representation. Where would you start with that? And your first response was Fable and Dragon Age, both games I've played. So easy talking topic there. Could you elaborate a little bit more, specifically starting with Fable?
Yes, so the Fable, like the first Fable, Lost Chapters, there is the option for um homosexual romance, but it's very hard and it's like you'd have to kill entire villages to actually get an option.
From my recollection, which is a long time ago when I was a wee little me, first playing Fable, I remember it was very heterosexual.
Yeah.
You had the option of male, female. I don't wait. No, there wasn't an option for male, female. There was just male, wasn't there?
Yes.
In the very first
You
one.
just
So
one.
very first Fable, girls weren't even included.
No.
I remember that. You can only be a male hero. Actually, let's quickly address that too, because very ironically, very first Fable, the hero is men, obviously, right? Because who else would it be? But you look at the more recent trailer for Fable. Have you seen it? The new Fable game
Yes.
coming out?
We like the woman.
Amazing!
Yes.
Yes, yes, yeah. And she's like brawling and drinking and laughing, and it's like, yeah, it's very classic Fable hero. I love it. I was really excited to see that. There's been some negative comments about it though, with people saying, "Oh man, stop ugly making women ugly in games." Right? If she's
Yeah.
going to be the main hero, she has to be attractive. And I was like, "Oh," because she reminded me of me, and I was like, "Oh." But I see myself in her. I'm happy with that. And also, I didn't think she was particularly ugly. And I know I'm going off on a tangent here because it's nothing to do with sexuality or gender identity.
It's fine.
But so I really I get enraged when I hear people say that because partly because Fable is very cartoony, not particularly attractive looking people in this game, and it's got a history of the longer you play this game, the worse you tend to look. Even
Yeah.
if you are a good person, by the end of it, you are effed up.
Yes, with the scars and the magic running through you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
like sometimes you look demonic.
Yeah.
And even when you've done good things, it's hard to look at yourself.
Yeah.
Um, but you know what? I think from a psychological perspective, that actually makes sense, right? It's always like your face and your everything is a reflection of the choices that you've made,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And even if you've become that fabled hero, regardless of like whether or not you're considered to be a good person, you've still had to make questionable moral choices there, and that's again reflected in how you appear. Again, going off tangent a little bit, like I think for us this is kind of like one of those key RPG games that we grew up with that kind of evolved our love for it. um Anyway, yeah, so from the very first Fable, it was extremely heterosexual, single gendered, and then we can start to see this progression over time of how that's changed. So I was it Fable 3 where we were finally able to see that expansion of both what do you call it, polyamorous, heterosexual and homosexual relationships, because I think Fable 2 we see the introduction of multi-gendered, so you could be a boy or a girl. Very exciting. I remember being like, oh my god, I'm a girl, I don't care what I look like, I'm a female, yes. So that was really exciting, but still very heterosexual in its gameplay as well. So we can slowly start to see it evolving over time. So first the gender, and then by the third one, boy, girl, whatever. But I think my main goal particularly is like someone on that cusp of puberty who likes to explore all those romantic options, was just marry every human possible in the game, right? Set them all, buy all the houses, adopt all the children, have as many babies as possible, and marry everybody. Man, woman, doesn't matter, they're mine because I'm the hero. I own everything.
Yeah, you literally own everything. And
so you do see, yeah. So we start to see things kind of like handed over to the player. So we're not kind of given a narrative that we have to play through like on train rails. But we start to see over time between 1, 2, 3, and the newer one now that this evolution of, okay, now we're acknowledging that, you know, there's more than one gender. There's more than just being a man. Now there's this choice in both your gender and how you live your experience as a hero, right?
Yeah.
The fabled hero, what is your journey? What's your experience? What kind of hero are you?
Fable is very like narrative driven a lot of the time, but it also gives you a lot of freedom in what you want to be as a person.
Yeah, particularly with the later games. And I think that's one thing that we briefly talked on in just one of our general conversations when I brought up, hey, do you want to do this podcast with me? This is what I want to talk about. I think you briefly mentioned that RPG games tend to give you more of that flexibility and freedom because it is about you as the player. It is about your experience. So your gender is important. Your sexuality is important because all of those things play an integral role in then how you interact with and experience the world that you're in. So one of the other games that you brought up was Dragon Age as well. So no, not Dragon Age?
Yes, Dragon Age.
Because, okay, fantastic.
Because people actually have sexualities and not just bisexual.
Elaborate.
As in, you can only romance certain characters based on your own gender.
Right, yes. So, like, if you're a woman, you'd be romancing a man. If you're a man, you're romancing a woman. Yeah. And so
the NPCs,
do you want to,
the
NPCs
were only available to certain genders as well.
Yes. Okay, so walk us through like first, second, whatever.
Well, I didn't actually play the second game, but like I played the first and third a lot. So
a question, correct me here, and I'm really sorry to anyone that's listening that loves Dragon Age, and I forget all the titles because I've got a really bad memory. Dragon Age Inquisition was the third or fourth?
It's the third.
Oh, phew. Okay, third. Yeah. Right. I've played 1, and I've played Inquisition, and Ed, my husband, was absolutely mortified that I would even dare to play Dragon Age Inquisition without having played the second one. It's like, how do you even know? You didn't finish the first story.
I tried to play the second. It was
okay.
And it was like when Morgan's mother came out, it was just too much. Yeah.
Hey, she plays a really important role in Dragon Age Inquisition, though.
Yeah, she does.
So it is all tied together, and we should have played all 3. I was roped into / held hostage and forced to watch all of the videos of other people playing Dragon Age 2 before I could go on to Inquisition. Thanks to Ed, because he knew how important it was going to be for me to really understand and get the experience we hope to get when we play games. So I did end up not playing the second one, but watching the walkthrough of someone else playing. And yeah, you can really see that evolution of, again, it starts off very heterosexual in gender and sexuality, and then you start to see a bit more exploration in the second game.
Yeah. Well, actually,
Yeah.
the first time I played Dragon Age Origins, I thought that you couldn't have homosexual relationships because I played a woman and I tried to get with Morgan, and that did not work. Yeah.
But again, remember, I think, and one thing that we're definitely seeing so much more of now is it isn't just our preferences,
No.
because we tend to be really egotistic
It's
when we
the-
play games. I'm the hero, I'm the main character, it's all about me and what I want. And now
it's
we go
also
and we're
about
like,
NPCs.
you know what? That's a fine piece of meat. I'm going to go romance the hell out of that. And they're like, oh, sorry, I don't swing that way. And you're like, excuse me? I'm
Yeah.
the hero. You do swing that way.
At the beginning, you feel all entitled to it, you know?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's nice because it is an accurate representation of how the world works. No, people
feels
aren't
more
just gay on
realistic.
a whim, right? It isn't selective. And everyone is really, really unique in that. And of course, I don't think that I'm going to get through a podcast without talking about this, but I have to mention Baldur's Gate again, partly. I'm sorry. Because of exactly this, though. I'm always a woman because I just am, because I find them nicer to look at, and men are a bit icky for me. Of course, I'm romancing a man right now, though. Halson, which I found really interesting and lovely because he's a. I guess I think I'm using the right kind of terminology here. Would be considered to either be bisexual or pansexual, in that he doesn't necessarily have any limitations on who he finds attraction to if his heart calls to. Also has this really polyamorous kind of ideal around relationships, which is because he's very much one with nature. It should be that we fulfill each other as much as we can for as long as we can, and if that's forever, fantastic. If not, then we part ways on good terms, right? Like, I don't own you. You should be free to love and leave as you please, which was really, really nice. But that being said, like, maybe I'm a one person kind of person, and yes, that kind of relationship still works, but it just kind of highlights that every person in that game has their own gender identity, has their own sexuality, and how they interact with each other and with you as the main character is different and dependent on those things. So that's probably like the newest, probably best example of how you can implement diversity across sexuality and gender in a game. But I'd say games like Dragon Age, games like Fable, being those like really early RPG kind of games that started to experiment with that, are the ones that paved the way and ultimately kind of made some of those mistakes. But we can see over time change with those trends and the desires of the people that play the games.
Yeah, because you want to play with actual like people as NPCs.
Yes, absolutely. So kind of like moving on to our next point, I wanted to discuss kind of like inclusive game design. So, what games that we have heard about or know of that really actively incorporate LGBTQI plus characters and storylines in their games. I don't know if you've heard of the Life is Strange series.
Yes, like all three. Yeah.
All three. Yeah. So this is an episodic, for the people that don't know, this is an episodic graphic adventure game series that includes LGBTQI plus characters and addresses themes of identities, relationships, and coming of age. And I'd say that's primarily at the core of these stories. If you look at the first Life is Strange in particular, I don't think you're forced into it. It could just be a platonic friendship with both the main character who you're playing through the perspective of and her friend. but it can be romantic. And I think it's nice to have that option, because then it doesn't force you into a narrative,
Yes.
but it also
Well,
doesn't lock you out of narratives as
Max
well.
is a young person, and you get to decide really who they are through your choices. So it's really important to have those sorts of romantic options.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like at its core, we really start to experience changes in our perception of our gender identity and sexuality in that kind of adolescent period. So those games kind of perfectly represent how those choices that we make and the relationships that we develop really influence our identities in that way, and either flesh it out and refine it and make it really clear for us, or kind of still leave it a little bit ambiguous. So I'm not sure if necessarily you would say that the person that you're playing as is either straight or bi or gay or lesbian. But again, I think it's left to be ambiguous because they want you to have that experience of being that adolescent and having these confusing choices.
Yeah.
I would highly, highly recommend to play this series if you haven't already. Being episodic, it does mean that it's done in episodes, similar to kind of like an interactive graphic novel. So
Yeah.
it is kind of like a click-based storytelling game, not full epic adventure RPG, but still RPG style. It's really fantastic.
Yeah.
The other one that I would bring up, because I don't think that I would be forgiven if I didn't, there are two more. First one being Mass Effect.
Yes.
So huge
Steve.
BioWare title. Um, so this one really provides players with the opportunity to engage in relationships with characters on different genders and species, and have a really big range of gender and gender and sexuality in terms of its representation in that. I played the crap out of this game.
I mean,
And at no point did I ever think that I would be hardcore gay for some kind of plant-based soldier. He's like, I don't know, a prey mantis. I don't know what Garrus is, but whatever he is, he's a hunk of well, not a person. He's a hunk of an alien, because it really didn't become about that. And I think that's one of the things that I really like about this game is it questions humanity, what it is to be human, and those qualities of humanity that we find outside of humans and human nature. So, your team is predominantly made up of species outside of humans, though there are humans, but we all ignore them because really, who cares about them? They, whenever I had to kill someone, I'd kill them. It was they were very vanilla. I'm like, I'm not here for that. You're very boring. Garrus, yes. Tali, absolutely. Liara, I mean, she's the princess. Who could not romance Liara? But my point being, for me, it really highlighted that, particularly when we think about relationships and love, that it can be, the lines, particularly around sexuality, can become really, really blurred. Because with this game, it takes away that idea of having like a human face necessarily to all of these things that make you want to be connected with another individual. So for me, the reason why I ended up really loving Garrus as a character was he was funny, he was strong, but he was also really vulnerable, right? And I felt that I could connect with this individual at a really intimate level through my character and have this really great evolution of a relationship that had nothing to do with this person's gender or their sexuality. I mean, they weren't even human. So that was a whole realm which I didn't think that I would ever kind of go into,
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I really loved about that BioWare title.
Yeah. And BioWare's pretty good with this sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if you're looking at the evolution over time, I think BioWare is one of the ones that I'd consider to be very on trend. Yes. I think they're really aware of their fan base and what people want.
Yes.
So they stay very tuned in.
EA as a whole, really. Well, not always. But like the Sims, they're not really tuned in.
Yeah, of course. All right, yes. All right, you know what? We can't not address The Sims because if we're looking at RPGs and like life sims and things like that, The Sims. Yes, that's the biggest one. How can we not talk about that? So life simulator, huge range for gender and sexuality and relationships. And with the most recent Sims, we've seen that patch update, right? So we can
Yeah.
look at there's a huge range of what's been changed. Your gender, how that's represented, whether it's femme or masc or non-binary, whether you pee standing up or sitting down, can you become pregnant or not? Are you interested in having intimate relationships with this, both or none? And then as well, having other sims. So we talked about how when you play games, it isn't just about what your character wants.
Yes.
Right. So in the past, we see with The Sims, you could basically you joke with them 50 times, they fall in love with you, and then you get married and have babies or adopt or whatever. But now I can make best friends, and I'm like, all right, hey there, how's it going? And oh, sorry, not interested like that. I thought we had a friendship, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
The only kind of issue I had with that, without using modifications, was that I actually found it really hard to be gay because I was gay, but then all of the NPCs decided they weren't. So I know.
Yeah.
So then, unless I've got my mods or my cheats on where I can actively go into create a sim and modify their sexual preferences, I found it really difficult. I hope that they've kind of fixed that so it's a bit more diverse, like naturally in terms of the algorithm.
A lot of them are like very fluid or figuring it out, I guess. Except for like the Grim Reaper, he's asexual, I think.
Yeah, okay, I love that. So characters like the Grim Reaper or Santa, or what have you, they will have their set sexualities and genders. And Grim Reaper in particular doesn't really have a gender, doesn't really have a sexuality. It's like, why would I, right? I'm only here to reap your soul. Though any real simmer will know you've at least romanced and had children with the Grim Reaper one time.
Yeah.
Who has? Oh man, you know what? We need to do another episode for sure on life sims because there's so many coming up. You look at what's that? Is it Chinese or Korean one? I reckon it's Korean. What's the Korean one? Oh, you haven't? I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but we'll come back to that. Okay. And there's parallels. There's so many new life sims coming out to challenge the Sims, and I'm so excited for it because I'm sick of the Sims having a monopoly on the live sim market. Okay, so we went off on a huge tangent. So to back now, the whole reason we brought up the Sims in the first place was EA being a good representation of the people. Depends. Yeah, you know what? They do. If it's going to make them money, they'll listen. Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
That's what most corporations are like.
Sure, more or less. I mean, particularly if you're looking at the AAA title, like developers, they want to make money. That's why they're AAA games, right? And they stick with it. Like, how many Diablo games do you need to know that that's how they make their money?
Yeah.
All those microtransactions. Okay, last one for today. Tell me why. Have you heard of that one?
I've heard the name.
Okay, so for most people that have played games like Life is Strange, Tell Me Why is almost like a natural transition off of that.
I remember it. Yeah,
so it's another episodic adventure. This one's by Don't Nod Entertainment. It's a storyline of a transgender protagonist and their twin. And it explores themes of family, identity, and memory. It was it's a slow burn. I struggled to get through the first part because I remember being stuck on the ferry and I was like looking at my clock real time, being like, I've been on this ferry for 5 minutes. I've talked to everyone. I'm just like here looking at mountains now. Like, speed it up, please. But once we got past that point and you get into the house and you start unlocking these memories, it's really traumatic. And I think for both of us coming from not the easiest background in childhood, there were moments in there where it's really confronting when you're talking about identity and gender and mental health issues and child neglect and feeling isolated and disconnected and trying to find your way back to like healthy family life and healthy identity.
Yeah.
It's a game I'd really highly recommend because I haven't seen very many out there that specifically talk about that experiences of transitioning. And
Yeah.
also to highlight as well, this is a female to male transition, which is not as common and particularly underrepresented when we do talk about trans identities in games as well. So
Yeah.
it is quite common to see that male to female, but not so common to see that female to male transition.
Well,
So I think
all of it
that's
is
what I really like.
not very common.
No,
I mean,
it's not, but this
you can
one's
look at it.
particularly underrepresented.
You can find it. It's like lots of dating sims.
Yeah, but dating sims.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not-
Yeah, is it a real game or is it just for lonely people? Who knows?
It depends on the game. Like there's different dating sims.
Oh no! Oh, the dad dating sim. That was
Dream Daddy.
amazing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know I said that Tell Me Why was going to be the last one, but oh my god, when I seen that, I think I seen it suggested on Good Game. Yes, and I seen that and I was like, that's it. I'm going to go romance the crap out of those dads. I was very, very gay in that game. I enjoyed it so much. It was fantastic. It was a huge moment of exploration in sexuality and toxic well, not that they were toxic masculinity or anything like that, but kind of overcoming that. You had these big, like, butch, like, bear daddies who were, like, very tender and, like, just let me look after you. I make good muffins. Or, you know, like, Mr. Dreadlocks is like, I'll look after my daughter well and make you good coffee. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is great. Yeah, I really love that game. That was fantastic. Okay, I lie. Not all dating sims are for people that are lonely. Or maybe.
Some of them are. Like,
yeah.
some of them
but
are.
That one was just a really brilliant game. I loved it so much. I really enjoyed it. I played it through until I had romanced everybody.
That's commitment.
It was commitment. I love myself some good BL. I've never denied that. I'm a full-fledged fujoshi, which is the Japanese term for an older woman who likes boys' love for some reason. But there's something about, you know, like wanting to fight for love no matter what the kind of challenges are, you know, being true to yourself that just lights a fire inside of me. And I think that's particularly why this is such a passionate topic of mine. And I'm so happy to start really seeing over time that change and development in these games, in these gaming companies and developers, and the games that I love, because I love Fable and I love Dragon Age, and now with that wider range of diversity, it feels like something that I can continue to love for different reasons as well. And we cannot deny that those changes over time have made the games more enjoyable.
Yes. Especially like, well, we can look at the Sims and like they added things in. It wasn't there in the base game. They worked.
No. Yeah, and that's one of the good things about games like that. And again, Baldur's Gate is when you listen to the people and what they want, and you continue to patch and update those games to be more inclusive and to change it and to be more accurate in terms of the desires of the people that are going to play the games. Anyway, this has been an extremely long episode, and I've been very inconsistent in my timing, so we should definitely wrap this up now. But it was really fantastic having you on here to talk about this, because this is the kind of stuff that we rant about all the time anyway. So now everyone else gets to listen to us have a gas bag about it.
Yay.
This is definitely not the last time that you're going to be seeing Kaine here on my podcast. But for today, this is it for Girls in Gaming. So until next week, GG everybody.
GG.
Thanks again for joining us here at Girls in Gaming. Don't forget to check out our Instagram and YouTube channel for all our recent posts and upcoming content. Until next week, GG everybody.